Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for coming. It's always a pleasure to sit here and study Talmud. Those of you who are watching us, we are doing it from Annapolis, Maryland, and try to visit us and be here with us to make you feel at home all the time. Before we go to this type of Gemara study, we start with the Mishnah we just begin this morning. It's the Perek Revi'i, chapter 4, in Talmud Pesachim. The Mishnah dealing with different minhagim. The background of this Mishnah is the reality when it's come to a minhagim, especially soon we reach the festival of Pesach. There are many different minhagim. You have a situation in one hand that we are facing a tremendous amount of joy by being part of what Isaiah prophesied, and he said that it will be a time that all the nations of the world are gathered, and you see the Jews from all different four corners of the world gather together and be part of the one united nation of Israel. But on the other hand, it set itself his own problem, which is sometimes you have a husband and wife. One has a different minhagim, different traditions, and it creates sometimes unnecessary conflict within the house. So the Mishnah here is dealing with three different levels of those conflicts. One is in a personal life, and the other one is in a sense of community life, and the third is just a person who's traveling, or if you have a merger of a few different communities that they have a different background. So the case here first is the eve of Passover. As you know, the eve of Passover, the time of the temple times walk was not done after midday, because at that time the need for slaughtering the Passover offering, and because of that they didn't involve in any type of work. The problem is that since the Jews were segregated for so many years in so many different communities, you have a situation that people have a different minhagim, a different customs. So the Mishnah said it's a general statement that makom shenagul asot melacha b'arvei psachim ad chatzot osim. The place that there is the custom to do work at the eve of Passover, they're doing it. Makom shenagul shelo la'asot en osim. The place that they have minhag not to do, so don't do it. If someone is traveled from one location to another, or vice versa, נותנים עליו חומרי מקום שיצא משם, וחומרי מקום שהלך לשם, ואל ישנה אדם מפני המחלוקת, which means we impose upon the person the stringencies of a place that he came from, or the place that he goes to. So in other words, he cannot use the fact that he is there as a temporary visitor by saying that I'm going to be lenient because everybody else is lenient. We go by, in that sense, by the stringencies in both ways, and a person cannot change the custom just because to avoid any type of controversy. This is a Mishnah that sounds simple, and I wish that it's simple, but it's not. Why it's not? There is a very famous Meir, it's a great commentator, just recently discovered his commentary, it's going back for hundreds of years. He said on the Tractate Shabbat in his commentary is that minhag avotenu, the customs that we have from our body, that we not necessarily understand why, we should not disregard it. Because there is a lot of holiness, there is a sacredness, and not always we know the background, but we cannot just disregard it. It's a sentence in the book of Mishlei, it's a famous book written by King Solomon that said, Al titosh Torah timecha, do not disregard some nice traditions, some customs that you get from your great-grandmother. So on one hand, we have this important statement. However, if it's a husband and wife, you have sometimes a very serious challenge. She is eating kreplach, he is not eating kreplach. She is against rice and beans on Passover, he is for that. They came from very different background. What do? How you manage a house in such a way? So if you look just at the Mishnah, so it sounds simple. but we never rules, we never make halakha, we never pasken halakha. In other words, we never make halachic decision just by reading the Mishnah. So the way that the Mishnah looks, it sounds simple, that we just go by the minhag. But now we go a little deeper.
But Rabbi, can I
please
interrupt you? You said that this particular
just
rabbi,
talk loud to make sure it is.
Sure. You said this particular rabbi had said, don't disregard the minhagim of your grandmother, your great-grandmother, your great-great-grandmother, even if we don't understand why. There is an inherent holiness in these minhagim, and therefore we shouldn't disregard them. But isn't it true that these minhagim developed as a response to different circumstances at specific times and places?
True.
So when those times and places change, why is it necessary to keep those minhagim?
Excellent question. We, by all means, thank you. We take every minhag differently, and this is something that we always recommended to ask the rabbi of the community to get clear over those minhagim, because some of them it's really not applicable, makes no sense. I give you a small example. As you know, on Passover Seder I have many guests over the years. One year we have, I don't remember the exact, but about 40 people. And it's a husband and wife and 3 kids. I think you saw it. And they are Iranian Jews. And she brought a large green onion. You remember that? Oh, it was hilarious. And at the midst of the Seder, she took this onion and she started, lashing it on the top of her husband's head. Again and again. We are slaves in Egypt. And she kept doing that. And I couldn't stop laughing, because to me it was the most hilarious thing I ever saw. Did you ever know this minhag? She took this onion, she beat him up with this onion. We are slaves in Egypt. Boom, boom, boom.
It's like a leaf, man, sort of. With the
whatever, like a stick. I couldn't believe it. And he was smiling and had the joke. I didn't understand it. And then I saw the children do it to one another, this Iranian family. It turns that somehow in Shiraz, in Tehran, one of those very large observant Jewish communities for many years, they have this type of meaning. I heard later that some Egyptian Jews and some other Middle Eastern countries' Jews, they carry a big sack or a big bag, and they walk during the Seder with that bag, and they said, we are enslaved in Egypt. It's all kind of minhagim or different ideas that people come from, and they have those ideas.
Yes, but wait, getting smacked in the head with an onion is a lot different from eating it. We're talking about food here.
It was soft onion.
But I'm just saying that we're talking about the food issue here.
Yes.
Now you're away from an area where we're
I wasn't sure to this very day. I wasn't sure if it was invented by the ladies or by the men in Iran, and what's the background. I'm not so sure to this very moment. Maybe someone makes me smarter.
If it was the Jews, it was a woman.
No, but with Iran today, you don't. I'm not so sure about it. But the point is, you see a different minhagim. You see a different idea. Now the problem is, as you mentioned, that it can create a very unnecessary tension. So if we jump just straight to halacha before we discuss all the complications, one of the beautiful statements that come out from the late Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, may he rest in peace, he wrote a series of books. It's called Igrot Moshe, the letter of Moshe, and he was a great, absolutely great rabbi in New York. So he explained there over the years, he was in a Bet Din, he was in a rabbinic leader, that he brought a simple idea, simple point. He says, you cannot have husband and wife sitting around the table, ha'asur lazeh mutar lazeh, ha'mutar lazeh asur lazeh. Whatever forbidden to one is permitted to the other, and vice versa. If you go by the neighbors, it may be nice. I'm eating this food, you don't eat this food. I'm drinking this, you don't drink this. I'm strict on the Chalav Israel, you're not strict on Chalav Israel. I'm taking the Pat Yashon, that's nice by neighbors. I trust these kashrus, you don't know. But if it's a husband and wife, you cannot live together by two people and make this type of situation. So, it's really different if, for example, if it's a husband if he's Ashkenazi, for example, and the whole community is Ashkenazi, and he moved to Deal, New Jersey, which is mainly Syrian Jews, so he basically needs to go before the rabbis, before the Bet Din, and get annulment for his some type of vow, some type of life commitment. And the moment he gets married and he's part of new community, they can release him from that commitment, and from now on he can go by the community minhag. Okay. Now we go a little further with that. I want to show you an example with the Mishnah that we study here, and you see later how it's connected. The Mishnah said as follows, and you can see it from the text. I can read it as a side. It's a Mishnah in the Tractate Brachot. In the Talmud is a page 10b, and the Mishnah said as follows: Beit Shammai Omrim, the house of Shammai said, Ba'erev kol adam yate v'yikra. In the evening, a person shall bend and read the Shema, right? Uvaboker ya'amod. But in the morning, you need to stand up and recite this prayer. Shene'emar, as it's written, what we said in Shema, ubeshoch becha uvekumecha. When we lie down, when we stand up. Okay? Ubeit Hillel omrim, the house of Hillel said, Kol adam kore kedarko. Every person should read according the way that he is manner. Shene'emar, as it's written, ubelechtecha baderech, the way that you walk. Im kein lama ne'emar beshoch becha uvekumecha. So the Mishnah asks a question, you are contradicting yourself. In the beginning you said when you lie down, when you rise. And then you said that while you walk, which means whatever it is, you can do whatever it's convenience for you. So the Mishnah answered and said, usually it's go by the Besha'a shebnei adam shochvim, uBesha'a shebnei adam omdim. This verse simply establishes the proper time for reciting the Shema, right? It must be done at the time that people are lying down, right, to sleep, and at the time that the people are rising from their bed. Okay? Now is the story that you see how it's connected to our subject. So it was a great rabbi by the name of Rabbi Tarfon. Amar Rabbi Tarfon, Ani הייתי בא בדרך. I was once coming on the road, והיטייתי לקרות כדברי בית שמאי, and when a time of evening, what they do, I just moved myself and I was lie down the way that the strict Beit Shammai said, and as a result, vesikanti atzmi mipnei alistim. And I thereby, what happened? I endangered myself on account of all these robbers and bandits, of all these people who may attack me. Which means, what happened here, he tried to be strict in the place that he should not be strict. Since the halacha is not going by Beit Shammai, but he tried to do it. Can you imagine the person, for example, ride a donkey, and now he's lie down on his side to say Shema, because they said when you lie down. The Torah doesn't mean literally when you lie down, okay? And that man, that rabbi, endangered himself for doing that. The rabbis get angry at him, and they said, Amru lo, the sages said to him, Oh ho ho, kedai ita lachov ba'atzmecha. Guess what? If they attack you, it will have been fitting for you to have come to harm. Why? Shavart al divrei Beit Hillel, for by deliberately, right, lying down for the Shema, you basically transgressed the words of Beit Hillel. Since we follow the halacha of Beit Hillel, so what type of business is this to do such a thing, to move yourself and go this way that Beit Shammai said? It's not that we belittle, God forbid, what Beit Shammai said. It's just in a practical matter we establish something as a halacha, and that's very important to stick by the halacha. Now, there is a very fine line, it's like walking on eggs in a sense, between halacha, Jewish law, and minhag, and a custom. And many times people mix between the two. What is halacha and what is a minhag? Halacha is we have the obligation to say Shema. Okay? Halacha is that Shema need to be said with full concentration. Minhag, for example, is the idea that Ashkenazim, for example, we're getting close to Passover, does not eat kitniyot, rice, beans, and things like that. Anybody know, by the way, why Ashkenazim does not eat kitniyot on Passover?
Rice?
Why? Why they don't eat rice?
I had read that it was common for rice to be milled in the same mills as other grains, so they were concerned that there would be other grains that could be mixed in with the rice when they received it, so therefore it was easier just to outlaw the rice as well.
Very, very nice. Very nice. Did you hear that too?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's a little bit elaborate. There is a Talmud in Pesachim, I'm digressing for a second. There's a great Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri who dealt with that. And he said, look, the Torah said in many places that we are forbidden to eat any type of 5 species of grain on Passover. Anything, the definition of chametz, to leavened bread, is anything that puff up when you moisture it with water. After 18 minutes it puff up. Here is the problem. 5 species of grain like oat, rye, spelt, barley, all these different species of grain, it's clear cut. You see it, this is a matzah, this is a bread. You see it's puff up after 18 minutes, boom. The issue with rice, beside of the odor, is if someone who's uneducated, someone who's unlearned person, imagine that person walk in the rabbi's house and he knew that we are forbidden on Passover for anything that is puff up. If he sees rice and beans, that rabbi was concerned when it was a discussion, was concerned that that person will mix between rice and grain. And he come home and he will say to his wife or etc. or she said to her husband, guess what? We can eat bread. Why? I saw in the rabbi's house they eating stuff that puff up. They don't differentiate between rice and grain. So in that sense, the rabbis put the boundaries, and they said, we're not eating it as Ashkenazim. Is another important point. As you know, in the past century, the Western culture was extremely exposed to several revolutions. If you talk at the early 1900s, we have the agricultural revolution. Following years later, we have the great communication revolution. Who believed in the past that the person can live without cell phone? The truth of the matter, I don't know if I told you, but cell phone discovered in Israel, my original country, years before it came to be in the other places. And the old Ben Gurion airport, one time, sorry, I hope, they're taping me, but it's okay. So one time I was in the airport, and we have the human necessities, and I was standing there, and I saw the guy next to me while he's doing his stuff. He was talking in 2 cell phones at one time, and to me it was like one of those weirdest things I ever saw. But hello Yossi, wait, Yankale, אתה שומע? And he is in the place that he shouldn't talk at the first place. But but the point is, the new revolution we are facing now, and the facing is the communication revolution. The downside of this is when you are going to 7 Mile Market to buy a product, you don't necessarily know what the process this product took, what exactly happened. If you look, for example, on a matzah, you see a different prices, and you see mishat ktsira. For example, they check the process even at the time that they planted the seed to the time that they collected the matzah, which is a different level of supervision, different level of stringencies when it comes to this process. It's very important. Now, in that sense, Sephardic community are way advanced more than Ashkenazi. Why? Because since many of the Sephardic community either used to do it outside of their homes, so they are very familiar with the process, and people, even lay people who are not necessarily big educated people, they clearly know the difference between rice and beans and grain, while others who are just familiar as a community, so the Sephardic rabbis does not impose on the community those restrictions. For sure there are other reasons, and it goes back hundreds of years in Hungary and other communities that argue over these rules of kitniyot. But in general, it's a boundaries that the rabbis put over, all those areas that the people should not mix between grains or real grain and something that is like legumes and beans and rice and other things. Okay? Now, with that in mind, when it's a husband and wife, it's a serious question, because you don't want to have any conflict. So what basically we're going to, it's either, usually if it's a no established minhag in a community, you go by the husband, because basically the minute she married him and they are part of a household, part of the agreement, at least by the way that the rabbis look at things, is you can have two bosses in a house. And it's nothing to do, my friend, with equal rights or anything like that. It's just establishing some proper decorum, proper pattern in a house. So, as I said earlier, if he moved to a totally Sephardic community, he needs to annul the vow, and he can go by that. But if the regular case that is no real established minhag in a community, then they have to go one way. And the way that we in general go, it's that way. However, I must say, since I mentioned Rabbi Feinstein, I must say that he mentioned in several other places that the husband cannot impose a personal chumrah, a personal stringencies upon his wife. For example, husband cannot say to his wife, "Oh, I want you to shave your hair." Why I want that? Because I think that that's the proper modesty for you. He cannot impose that on her. Or he cannot say, "Look, even there is an eruv around this area, I don't want to carry." So personally for yourself, you can do it, but you cannot impose your spouse over your personal chumrah, personal stringency. You cannot ask her to wear a sheitel and a bichel and a head cover just because it's your stringencies with no serious foundation. So that's important to know, that it's not a dictatorship by any means. It's just what makes sense. You cannot have two people around one table and it's a constant conflict. Now, there is a serious question that come up. I heard it once from one of the Rosh Yeshiva of Ner Israel. We have this chavrusa here, Rabbi Friend. I assume you heard that name, Rabbi Sachar Friend, years back. I'm speaking almost 20 years ago. I heard from him on one of his shiurim. He talked about a merger between communities. You have one community, for example, of Russian, people who came from Russia. There's another community from Brazil, or Panama, or one of those South American community, and another American established community, and they merged. And it's a common situation. The neighborhood changed, the people change, the area is not so safe anymore, so people just move from one location to another. That's a common reality living in the United States. So they came and they asked the rabbis this type of question. It's a dialogue with all these people. When it's come to synagogue, how should we do? For example, there are some people who lift up the Torah before the reading. Sephardim, for example, taking out the big Torah from the ark, they lift it up and show it to people before the reading. Ashkenazim, as you know, lift it up after the reading. But even within Ashkenazic, there is Jerusalem customs and Chabad customs and other customs. For example, there is a tradition to leave the Torah, to lift it up,
and then put it
back on the table,
and roll
it and take it close, for all kinds of reasons. Okay, either safe reason or Kabbalistic reasons, whatever it is, we respect all the reasons in the world. But you see a diverse customs between communities, and we don't have Messiah yet, and we don't have the temple, which is one united minhag. So what do you do in that sense? So you're merging different people from different communities. How are you going to establish something? So the great Rabbi Feinstein said, and as well as Rabbi Waldenberg said, I heard it from Rabbi Friend, that in America, in those days, Giúdachas was the machers there in New York. You remember him, Mr.
Giúdachas was from Massachusetts. You're thinking of Mario Cuomo?
Cuomo, I'm sorry. So anyway, he come up with a statement that we should all remember this is a land of immigrants. So the rabbis use it to say that we are not like Czechoslovakia. In Czechoslovakia, in Prague, you have a 700 years community. So this is a well-rooted established minhag. So even you don't have a temple, you cannot uproot this type of minhagim in a community. So if they lift up the Torah before the reading, that's the minhag for 700 years. But since we are in the land of immigrants, and when you're dealing with land of immigrants, is no such a thing, minhag makom, the minhag of that place. Because what's the difference? Your grandfather came here 8 years ago, his grandfather came here 50 years ago, and my whatever it is came several years ago. So it's not such a thing, minhag makom. And therefore you have to find some fine line to compromise, because no one had the rights that is established minhag. However, now I'll show you a little bit further with that. What happened for someone who have dual citizenship between Israel and America, for example, or Israel and Australia? They have dual citizenship. What do you do in Passover? As you know, in Israel they established this one day. Outside of Israel, 2 days each Yom Tov, right? The first 2 days and the last 2 days.
Where do they live?
What?
Where do they live?
Let's say if half a year here and a half a year there.
So it's split half.
Split half. You have people, I know many people, in the business world, there are many people like that. They have their family over there, they have a family over here, they go to business there, they go to business here. I know some guy in the jewelry business, just as an example. They have the business in Belgium, in France. They living Saturday night or Sunday, most of them Saturday night, especially in the winter time, and they come back Thursday night or Friday morning. It's a 4 or 5 hours flight nowadays, okay? The business is in those countries, and they need to keep their businesses to support the families. And Shabbos if they are with the family in Israel. It's hard to make it with America. Even I know people in America that does that. I know a cantor in New York that flying every Saturday night and coming back every Friday morning. But I'm not talking such a long distance flight. Even close, there are many people like that. Relatively many people in the business world. So you see people that keep dual citizenship.
No, I understand, but I mean, if they're I'm saying if they spend most of the time in Israel, for example, then I would say they'd probably follow the minhag of Israel. But if it's split evenly, then
it's very hard. You need to
I'd say where are they then? They would follow.
You need to ask the rabbi. You need to ask the rav, because it's basically yes.
If you're traveling, you don't really have a lot of choice about telling the people who are preparing your meal for you how they should do it, right? Because you got to go with their custom.
Let's make it clear.
Whether it's
following the Mishnah, following all of this, it's simple. You have what we call a permanent resident status, and you have a temporary visitor status. You can come here. We finishing soon. So what happened is, if you are temporary visitor, then it's a different story. So, for example, if you come to America as a temporary visitor, like some of my family comes, and relatives, cousins, they cannot go blatantly on the second day and do things publicly. They cannot drive cars and do things publicly, because it's looked bad. It's against the established way of doing here. Even in private, it's a different story. But the opposite way, if I'm permanently here, even I have dual citizenship, I have to observe 2 days there if I'm a temporary visitor. So basically you go by the permanent resident versus temporary visitor. Equally need to ask questions. Yes.
But if you're
We are done. We will expire the time. Yeah.
If
You can let him finish. Yeah.
If you're staying with someone, or if you go to a restaurant that's serving Pesach meal and they serve rice, what are you going to do?
Excellent question. So the thing is this. It's a very good question. If you're Ashkenazi, okay, you just cannot eat it. Okay. If you're Sephardi, you can eat it.
But what if it's intermingled in the dish that they made, and if you're not eating that, you're not really eating the host food?
I got a question.
Yeah.
Since I'm Sephardi,
Yeah.
my wife is Ashkenazi background. But when we arrive, she eat it with me.
Correct. Because we just said earlier what all these great rabbis say, that you follow the husband in general. Thank you very much.